Welcome to Calgary International Airport and welcome back aboard the PMDG 737-800. Today we're going to be taking this aircraft down to Houston, Texas. It's going to be about a 4-hour trip, so let's get on board and get going. I've taken care of the very preliminary power of the aircraft, but everything else we'll need doing. If we have a look at the OFP, we can kind of brief the trip a little bit. So, cruising at 350, stepping to 370. Main things I wanted to scroll right down to was the weather and the route. So, let's see, yeah. Route is right here. We're going to be doglegging west a little bit, passing relatively close to our alternate, which will be Austin. And thunderstorms off to the northeast of Calgary and over the sort of northern central US, but apart from that, not a ton of significant weather on the way. So that's about all I wanted to get to with the OFP, at least right away. So we'll get back into the rest of the aircraft safety inspection powering up. So let's see, I got the emergency exit lights on, was about the last item I completed. So we'll double check that the gear handle is down with 3 green lights. Flaps are up with no lights. We'll run through the fire tests. So, loud noises, lots of lights come on. You get the idea. Check the squibs. Green lights come on as they should. The manual gear extension flap is closed, and our gear pins are in here as well. It's worth making a note of. So, we'll assume the circuit breakers have been checked because that sounds pretty bloody tedious. Head on up to the overhead panel and run the flight recorder test. Off light goes out as it should. Test the Mach and airspeed warnings. Getting our appropriate twinkles, and the aircraft should have enough power that we get a little shake from the stall warning. There it goes. And the other one. Good stuff. IRSs can go to nav. We'll run the master lights test and pretend I've checked every single bulb in the flight deck. And I'll also do the oxygen test, and I won't do it properly because I still haven't found the click spots to do it properly. So, sorry. And next it will be some FMS items. So if we pop into there, do the position initialization quickly. We are sat at Charlie Yankee Yankee Charlie. We're at gate Echo 95, but we don't really need that. We'll just grab the GPS position, pop that in there to start the alignment, and I will grab my SimBrief route. Get that via the uplink. They have a lot of trouble having to tediously enter everything manually. And I will set the aircraft payload and fuel, though I'll check those against the OFP later. From that route, select that route, and now that's on request. While I'm waiting, I'll turn some lights off because we don't really need a ton of panel lighting. It is going to be dark by the time we get to Houston, so we will be turning these back on eventually. But don't need it for now. Anyway, route uplink is ready. Go on and load that. And it's a long-ish route, at least by 737 standards, so take a second. So, route has been uplinked. Unable required nav, RNP, that's just because the IRS isn't aligned yet, so that's no big deal. Looking at the route page. So I'll pop the EFB down here so that we can reference the OFP for this. So if we have a look at our routing. So coming out of Calgary, we're going to be departing runway 17 left, which we're relatively close to, so it's a short-ish taxi. After that, we'll proceed direct Gadkey, so no explicitly named SID, and I also don't have access to the noise abatement information for Calgary, so we're just going to leave those values as default. Take a bit of a guess, really. So on the way out, I'll grab the airport chart so that we can brief the taxi in a minute. And probably actually all we need. On arrival, we are expecting the... Not sure how that's meant to be pronounced, so I'll call it Totoro 3 and runway 08 right. So... and we'll take the standard ILS. I don't think the weather's going to be bad enough to require any of the fancy ones. And we'll grab the airport and parking charts for the other end of the route as well. Ignore that ding-dong from Duolingo if the microphone didn't filter it out. Although I did it out if I can remember. Anyway. So, right, coming back into here. All we really need to enter the departure is runway 17 left out of Calgary, add that to the route. And then arrival at the other end. Once again, ILS 08 right. And let's see. It's transition, and I'll actually need to look at the approach chart to see about the other end of that. So, yeah, the ILS approaches into Houston are all really long, so we'll take that straight from add that to the route, activate, and we will check it. Make sure it all looks vaguely coherent. So direct GAD key out of Calgary, that's fine. Leading generally southeast. To a degree, I'm kind of trusting the aircraft to get this right. And yeah, that seems fine to me. If I were really being a tryhard, I would pull up the star chart and make sure that was all correct as well, but I'm reasonably confident that it is. Do our performance initialization. Now, I'll check the fuel on board against the requirement in the OFP, because I will be good about that. In part because I've taken the wrong unit of fuel in the past and nearly Gimli glidered myself. So block fuel, 13,521 kilos. That matches what's in the tanks. And I'll just open the weight and balance. I'm going to autofill these fields, but we'll check them against what's actually in here. So 0 fuel weight, 55.5 as it should be, and 69.1 for takeoff weight. That's all good. Go back into the OFP for the relevant data there. So cost index, because you're supposed to do, I think, left from the bottom up and then right from the bottom up for this. I think. I'm not sure. Not that it matters a huge amount. Cost index will be 80. Reserves on board will be... Let's see. I think you're always supposed to round those up, but it's a relatively low number. 2.6. Top of climb wind is 296 at 33 knots. It's not bad. In you go. For some reason it doesn't seem to want to accept that. Maybe I need to put in the cruise altitude first, so that's going to be, at least initially, 350. Top of climb wind, yeah, 296 at 33. Maybe it's like this is what you're supposed to do. And top of climb outside air temperature, unfortunately, is not nice and up at the top of the document like that. Mostly the Ryanair OFP format is very user-friendly, but not on that particular subject, unless it's actually there and I've been missing it all this time. It's entirely possible. Top climb outside air temperature would be at -50. So that's all good, we can execute that, and then on to the takeoff calculation. Still, Calgary, 17 left, it should be dry, completely flat, import all this good stuff, and that gives us TO1 and a selected temperature of 30 with flaps 5. And I'll take climb D rate 1 as well. I don't know what WestJet SOP is for that, so let's take a bit of a guess really. And onto the takeoff page, fill in the second page first. So wind over the runway, 160 at 9. Slope is 0. And I'm going to leave acceleration and reduction heights as default because, once again, I don't have access to the noise abatement information. So flaps will be 5, and I'll check the center of gravity against the... that's not weight balance. So, yeah, center of gravity should be 23. Close enough. And the performance calculator gave us V1 144, rotate 145, V2 148. And the ones the aircraft calculated are within 1 knot, so we can use them without any particular concern. And that should be the CD pre-flight done. I'll whack the EFB back over here. And at this point, we can run through the final flow starting on the overhead. So, IRS is it aligned, actually? You know, I don't think it is. Did I initialize this correctly? North 51, west 113. It should be. But my displays haven't lit up all colorful yet. What do we got up here? Yeah, it's still aligning. That's actually going to take a minute. Okay, I'll hold the yaw damper then. Hopefully I don't forget that. That will cause a terrible disaster, maybe, if I do. Actually, it'll probably just mean the autopilot doesn't come on. But in any case, moving on. Our navigation transfer and display switches are all as they should be. Fuel pumps can all come on now. To be honest, I probably should have started the APU a while ago. It's a toasty day. The cabin's probably quite warm. Holy moly. Yeah, it's like 40 degrees back there. Right, let's get the APU going and cool our passengers down before they all die of heat exhaustion. Pop this onto the APU gen for now, why not? That's all good for now. Back on through here. We're fueled, so seatbelt sign can come on. Window heat. And electric hydraulic pump. Voice recorder's on auto. Trim air is on. Recirculating fans on auto. Packs can come on. Isolation valve to auto. I'll put the APU bleed on once that's actually on. Now, we were stepping to... what altitude? Was it 390? No, 370, so I'll put that in here. And Houston is basically at sea level. Well, actually the airport is still about 100 feet, so put that in here. You can knock 50 feet off the altitude given from the runway here. And pressurization is on auto. Everything else is fine for now. Go down to here. Let's actually grab the altimeter setting. That was 2987. And IRS is aligned. Yes, yaw damper can come on, and I can stop worrying about it. So, inches of mercury we still use in Canada. 2987. Make sure traffic is being displayed, and we'll probably grab the weather on our way out, as in the weather display. In fact, I guess I can do that now, because I think it's inhibited on the ground so that we don't irradiate the terminal with the weather radar. Anyway, moving along the MCP. Back to takeoff ref page. V2 is 148 knots. And the runway heading, I think, is actually 165. We'll pop that in there, at least for reference. And I'll dial this all the way to the cruise altitude because we're not using any kind of ATC today. .370 flight directors can come on, and we'll do heading and probably level change initially, and then over to LNAV and VNAV once we've put in our direct. Although actually, no, I don't need to do that because you can probably just turn it 400 feet. Oh, nav? Will that arm? Let's try that again. Hopefully I'm not screwing up the logic here. No LNAV. Okay, we'll do VNAV and selected heading, I guess. Right, on down here, auto brake to RTO, MFD to the system page, check hydraulic quantity and pressure, and then onto the engine page for startup. We'll do reset and rate on the fuel flow. This is all good. Moving on down this way, speed brakes are stowed, flaps are up. Parking brake we will set because we're probably going to get rid of the chocks pretty soon. We've done the fire tests. Let's do 2000 and standby. These lights can come off. Supposed to test the aileron and rudder trim, but I'll never get them centered again if I do, so I'm just not going to touch them. Sorry. And APU's been on for a bit, so we'll get the APU bleed on. It actually probably turn the packs to high, so we get lots and lots of cool air going back into that cabin. That was really an oversight on my part, not getting that cooled a little bit earlier. Anyway, I think that's everything. So we'll run the safety inspection checklist. Surfaces and chocks, call that check. Maintenance status, call it check. Battery is on, which it is. Electric hydraulic pumps are on. Landing gear lever is down with 3 greens. And ship's library. Like this stuff down here. Oh, actually, this is an opportunity to show you something cool about the WestJet Fleet Pack I'm using. It has correct Canadian certificates of registration and airworthiness. They look exactly like this. I've seen real ones, so yeah, very cool. And yeah, let's have a look at them. Registration date, 18 October 2021, and actually aircraft certificates of registration don't expire. So that's nice. You only do a new one when the aircraft changes owners. So yeah. 1984 date of issue on the certificate of airworthiness is a little bit dubious. This aircraft is probably about 20 years newer than that. But well, that's maybe where they fall down just a little bit. Anyway, those are very cool. So for our before start items, we'll put the APU onto the buses, and we'll start clearing away our ground equipment. So we can dismiss all of the vehicles, close all of the doors, and release the jetway once those are closed. That might just take a minute. Yep, there it goes. Vehicles released. Flight attendants, arm doors, and cross-check. And at that point, parking brake is set. The light is red. We can get rid of the ground power and the chocks. So at that point, the aircraft is externally ready to be pushed back. So yeah, ground power is removed, doors are closed and armed, stairs, jetway removed, chocks removed, APU bleed is on. And I'll go back to auto on the packs. Hopefully that cabin's cooling down. Yeah, it looks like it. And the before start checklist. This is a long one. IRS mode selectors, nav, gear pins are back there. We saw that before. 1, 2, and 3 removed. Lights test, we've done it. Oxygen test, we've done it. Yaw damper is on. Assuage my paranoia. Navigation transfer and display switches, normal and auto. Fuel, we checked that 13.5 tons are required and are also on board, and the pumps are on, all of them. I do a lot of short flights that don't require the center pump, so I needed to make sure I remembered those this time. Ew, cabin, utility, and such like are on. Emergency exit lights are armed, fast seatbelt sign is on, window heat is on, air conditioning, pressurization, packs, auto, bleeds on, and everything is set. Pressurization mode selector is on auto. We will double check that so we don't Helios 522 ourselves. I don't mean to be flippant about that, but it is an important item. And instruments, let's see, altimeters are set, settings match up, we'll call that cross-checked. Auto brake set to RTO, hydraulics, normal, speed brake down to tent. Parking brake set, stabilizer trim, cutout switches, normal. Wheel well, fire warning, yeah, we've done all that. Radios, radar, and transponder, we've set that up. Takeoff briefing, I basically ran through what I was going to do. We'll call that the takeoff briefing, even if it's a bit informal. There's a PA item here. Welcome aboard. Boo. FMC and CDU pre-flight, that's complete. N1 and IS bugs are set. Stabilizer trim, haha, I didn't do that. This is why we have checklists. So 5.42 units. Set, or near enough. And performance, weight, and balance, we reviewed that, and all the other items on this are pretty irrelevant, so we'll call that checklist complete. And we'll also do the before start checklist below the line, because we're just going to push back right away here. So, air conditioning packs off. Sorry, passengers. Anti-collision light comes on, which is what Boeing calls the beacon. Parking brake is set. Transponder out off. And we will push back. Why do I have an electric annunciator warning here? APU is on the buses. I think that's actually normal. Anyway, using the Toolbar pushback plugin here, because by the sound of it, GSX is an incredibly buggy application that I'm rather loath to pay for. So we'll be pushing back tail to the right. I guess I didn't really brief the taxi, but it's very simple. We just go straight ahead, left out to the end of the runway. I'll pull up the ground chart once we're done the pushback and maybe review that. So, on request, release parking brake, and go. Now, is there an obvious point? I think we can call the engines clear, and I'll just start now. Thuds as we roll over some bumps. So, spin up engine 2. We've got N2 looking for 25% on that. Starter valves open, all that good stuff. Oil pressure, N1. 25, in it goes. And these lights should go out, which they have. And just monitor that engine as it spools up. Starter cutout, engine is looking stable, starter valves closed, lights are out. Spin up 1. And 2, rotation. Oil pressure, N1. And fuel. Pushback is nearly complete. Now, I'm beginning to wonder if that SIGMET about thunderstorms to the northeast was maybe understating things a little bit. Certainly had a big thunderstorm yesterday. Anyway, pushback is complete. Set parking brake and close the plug-in, at which point we can consider ground equipment to be clear. So engine generators onto the buses. APU can come off. And after start items, start switches go to continuous, pro heats on. Engine anti-ice, we definitely don't need. Packs. Auto. Get some engine bleed air back to our passengers. APU bleed can come off. Isolation valve is on auto. Flaps. We will set 5. Stabilizer trim, we've done that, 5.42 units. Start levers are at idle detent. Flight control check. Free and clear, everything's moving. Recall, nothing. And we'll close the engine page on the lower DU there. And the before taxi checklist. So generators on, APU off. Start switches continuous, probe heats on, air conditioning, packs auto, bleeds on, isolation valve auto, flaps. 5 required, 5 set, 5 indicated with green light. And stabilizer trim, 5.42 units required, 5.42 units set. Start levers are at idle detent, flight controls are checked, and recall is checked. So at this point, we are ready to taxi. I was just going to pull up the chart to briefly look at that. So we are currently sitting right here, so we're just going to taxi out to Delta, take it all the way to the end, and then off we go. 17 left there. So, without further ado, put the taxi light on, parking brake off, and we very briefly push the thrust levers all the way forward on the initial taxi to test the takeoff config warning, which has not sounded, and it's not supposed to. No descent path. We can check that later. Alright. So once we've made that left turn onto Delta, I'll run the before takeoff checklist to the line. It's a pretty short taxi, might as well use up the time. By the way, this is the FSIM Studios Calgary scenery that we're using today. It's very accurate, including inside the terminal buildings. Definitely recommend if this is somewhere you come to a lot. I normally can't really justify buying scenery for MSFS. I just don't have that kind of money, but because this is more or less my home base, I figured it was probably worth it. So, left onto Delta. Next time I'm here, I'll actually do a little tour of the inside of the terminal, because it's pretty neat. I should have done that this time, but I kind of forgot. And it's a little late now. So, we'll just run her down to the end. Before takeoff checklist to the line. Config checked. Flaps, 5, green light. Stabilizer trim, 5.42 units set. Takeoff briefing. Again, there's not a lot to say. We'll fly runway heading until our until we dial back to climb thrust, then we'll do direct GAD key, and off we go. Cabin, it says secure. We'll give him a little bing bong. It's probably not terribly necessary. And that's before takeoff checklist to the line complete. So just a quick little jaunt out to the far end here. And I'll leave that power in for just a second and then back. 25 knots is an okay taxi speed. Now, there is a road that passes under the runway here. I wonder if I can show that in the external view. This one here, which is, that's Airport Trail. Yes, passes under this runway. Weirdly enough, when the G7 was being hosted here last year, they closed that section of highway that runs under the runway for security reasons. So I guess it's a security threat to quote-unquote important people, but not to everyone else. I really don't get the big idea there. Anyway, probably the less said about that, the better. Yeah, if we don't have thunderstorms right now, there's definitely a build-up to them going on, so probably just as well that we get underway relatively quickly. I'm letting the aircraft idle to the end of the taxiway just to save a bit of wear on the brakes. We're going fast enough. And let's see, if it's currently 23:15 Zulu, we're getting away about 15 minutes ahead of the actual scheduled flight. Because this is an actual scheduled flight that goes at 5:30 local. And one aboard which I've been a passenger many times is part of why I'm doing it. Anyway, slowing down, ready to make our turn here. And there's the hold line. We'll assume ourselves clear for takeoff and run the lineup items. So, landing, lights on, turn off lights on, position lights, strobe, and steady. We will arm the auto throttle. We check that the approach is clear. Navigation, we have VNav and heading select, so that's fine. Transponder, Tara. And before takeoff checklist, below the line. So, MCP set, transponder, Tara, strobes on, landing lights on. We're ready to go. We have lots of runway. We'll make this a rolling takeoff. Assuming I don't completely stuff the lineup. So, right we go. Stabilize at 40% N1. Ooh, I very slightly overshot the lineup. Well, we'll goose it on the initial roll. 40%, stable, start the clock, and beans. A little bit of forward stick. See, my heading select wasn't in. This is why you check here and not here for what your autopilot's actually doing. Checked. Go and rotate, up we go, gently.
Positive rate of climb.
Gear up. And we'll just take runway heading for now and do direct to GAD-key once we're back to climb power. Autopilot in, why not? Command A. And there we're back to climb thrust. And we have positive acceleration, flaps 1. And direct GAD-key, LNAV, and VNav. Flaps up. Calgary's looking very green right now. Most of Alberta has gotten like an almost, a pretty ridiculous amount of rain in the last month, so everything's pretty green. The airport scenery does include a fair amount of the city as well, so the downtown skyline is pretty accurate there. Calgary Tower, Bow Tower. The Saddle Dome isn't looking very saddly. I guess we'll ignore that. Anyway, I'll also pay attention to what I need to be doing here, so... After takeoff, items... Pressurization, run a quick L check, everything looks okay. Start switches can come off. Gear can go to the neutral position. Auto brake off. And the after takeoff checklist. So air conditioning and pressurization. Checked and set. Engine start switches off. Landing gear up and off. Lights are out. Auto brake off. Flaps up. No lights. So that's everything until we hit 10,000 feet, which will be pretty quick. Because, I mean, Calgary is at 3,600 feet. I mean, it's not Denver levels of high and hot today, but still. But despite the heat and humidity, the aircraft is climbing at a respectable 2,700 feet per minute on the climb 1D rate. We can live with that. And once we pass 10,000, I'll check that VNav path item that the FMS was complaining about. Nearly there. So, getting up to 10,000, we'll run the flaps flow, so fuel, balanced, lights, where's my click spot? Off, APU, off, pressurization, let's give it a more detailed look. Yep, that all still looks good. And seatbelts, I'm going to hold those until we're well clear of these vertical clouds. Because those are probably going to be a little bit on the bumpy side. So, no descent path after Louis. Where's that? 7,000 above. Okay, so that's on the way into Houston. I'll fix that during the cruise, I think. Well, 7,000. Let's pull up the chart for that. Because one thing that has been a little bit of a gotcha for me is, yeah, let's make sure we're actually, let's make that a hard 7,000. One thing that's been a bit of a gotcha for me is having all these altitude or above things, and then the aircraft ends up really high when I arrive at my final approach fix. That happened to me in Victoria a while ago. That's not ideal. So, doesn't seem to be complaining now. I guess that's probably alright. Again, ridiculously long finals in Houston, but that's partly so that they can sequence all the traffic, I'd imagine. By giving people shortcuts or not giving them shortcuts. Anyway, I think once we hit transition altitude and set standard and all that stuff, get seatbelt sign off, I'll just carry on with the cruise climb, and we'll probably go to a bit of a time lapse for the trip on down. During which time your captain is probably gonna go eat dinner and watch anime for a bit. To be perfectly honest. Yeah, so these clouds seem to be topping out around 14,000, 15,000 feet. Those are definitely going to be building up into thunderstorms as time goes on. These are like towering cumulus and, what are they again? Altocumulus castellanus. So, be pretty bumpy for our passengers, I would think, on the way out of here, until we're well clear of those. So I will hold the seatbelt sign for a little bit. Are there any other items I can see to right now? Not really. I'll definitely include a link in the description to this WestJet Fleet Pack. It does include a lot of neat little details, including the certificates back there. So that's all good. Shall I read this? Give that a read if you want. It's a bit of a laugh. Yeah, nothing's jumping out at me. Tell you what, let's put this on our engine generators. That makes it a little bit more useful. Let's also figure out where the step climb is. So, Delta November Whiskey. How far along is that? Kind of close, I think. Let's have a look on here. Yeah. I'm curious, actually. Where is that? That's in... Is that in Montana? I think so. Dunwar. Okay. Alright. Set standard. Standard set passing 182 now. That checks against all of these. And I reckon that's about all I have to say for now. I'll probably come back as we get towards where we'll be doing our descent planning. We'll be in a bit. Welcome back. We're about 100 miles from top of descent. It's a little bumpy up here to the point I'm considering putting the seatbelt sign on a little bit early, but maybe we'll leave that be just for now. So let's get into our descent preparation. So looking at the arrival weather, we're looking at 150 at 8 knots, so a very minor crosswind, 10 miles, scattered at 4,200, altimeter 29 or 9 or 8, yeah, it's all looking relatively sedate. We'll pop that into here. So from then on, we'll head to the descent page, which is already open. We'll do 250 at 10,000 as the constraint. And open up the forecast. So we would like wind figures for 310, 200, and 10,000. I think. Okay, was that for the... Yeah, I was just executing that. Okay. And we'll request those descent winds now. I will put on a little bit of panel lighting, because it is just about completely dark now, so that everything is visible on the way in. And whilst that weather data is on request, let's actually keep the floods to a minimum. There we go. Alright, winds are ready, load, and we'll see if that moves our top of descent appreciably. Probably not with those sedate figures there. Yeah, that makes relatively little difference. So, still 103 miles to top of descent. And from there I'll go on to the fixed page. We're landing runway 08 right. I'll put in some range rings. We'll just do 10 and 5 miles. You can also do one as an approximate top of descent reference, but that'll be awfully necessary. Now, we checked the route already, so I'm not too bothered about that. Let's get on to the charts. So for the approach, it's already up. Let's see here. So course is 087. So I'll enter that into both of these, why not? 087, 087. I think I just saw lightning over there. That's possible, I suppose. So course 087, frequency is 1097. Enter that on both as well. And we'll double check the field elevation, why not? That's the blanking on where it is on the chart. Field elevation, field elevation. "96 feet. Sorry, my brain farted there, so yeah, that figure is still accurate. And our minimums, the ILS, are going to be, let's see, standard ILS, 295 baro. Right, sync the heading bug, just because I've noticed that. It's a useful idle fidget activity to engage in. And landing performance as well, why not? So for the approach ref page, we'll see, we currently have 4.9 tons of fuel on board. We're expecting to have 4.1 on landing, so we can knock 0.8 off current gross weight figure, so that's going to be 59.6. So that's just in there for reference. Then we'll go over to the performance tool. So landing en route. Taking runway 08 right. It should be dry. And this should be filling in our actual anticipated landing weight, which, yep, it has done. 59.6. We'll see what it comes up with for auto brake 2 at first. That will use most of the runway. Now let's actually look at the chart and brief the taxi in here. So 08 right. We probably actually don't want to use so much because we'll be coming back this way on the taxi in. So maybe I'll actually bump that to auto brake 3. Just in the interest of vacating that runway relatively quickly, which I'm sure ATC will be happy for us to do as well. Yeah, that uses more like 2/3 of it. That feels a little better. Although, I mean, wear on the brakes versus vacating in taxi time, that's probably all a bit of a delicate balance, really. And that's spitting out a VREF of 147 knots as well, which is correct for flaps 30 with an additive of 5, so pop that in. Alright, I am more or less satisfied with that. I think it's about all that needs doing between now and top of descent, so I might actually go back to time lapse and come back in as we're getting ready to shoot the approach, because there's really not a ton to do on the way down during the descent either. Really just set this bank angle limiter back up, you know. Seatbelt sign comes on 15-20 minutes before landing, which that'll be, let's see, landing at 0308, so probably put the seatbelt sign on in 20 minutes or so, unless it gets really bumpy on the way down, in which case we might do it a little bit earlier. But yeah, I think that's it for now. I'll like I said, probably come back as we're getting ready to shoot the approach. Welcome back again. We're just passing 11,000 feet on our way down towards shooting the approach, down onto that very long final that we saw earlier. The aircraft seems to be decelerating okay. It's not prompting me for drag yet, so I'll just let it do its thing for now, as long as we make that 250 knots at 10,000 feet. That should be generally fine. The seatbelt sign came on a while ago because it was rather bumpy on the way down. So at this point, we'll put the fixed landing lights on. So we approach 10,000 and the turnoff lights as well. Bank angle has been set back up to 25 degrees. Pressurization, let's have a quick look. Looks alright to me. And whack the recall very quickly, so 10,000 foot flaps flow, fuel, balanced, lights on, angle of bank checked, pressurization checked, seatbelts on, recall checked. So that's about all it needs doing for now. Still estimate field at about 308, so 18 minutes from now. I may have come back a little bit early in that case. Once again, very long final for the sake of traffic sequencing. And certainly sort of low clouds, haze, and darkness is a familiar sight on the way into here. So that's alright, I guess. Yeah, I think another time skip is in order. See you in a minute. Okie dokie, back for keeps this time. We're just rounding the corner onto that very long final. Estimate touchdown in about 9 minutes. I did pop the logo light on before because that should probably come on at about 10,000 or with the landing lights as well. So, and we can probably, well, yeah, might as well run the frisk check. So frequencies. 1097 is our ILS frequency, and we are indeed picking that up. DME just came in. Range rings, I've done 5 and 10, so that's alright. idents, yeah, ILS and DME are alive. Standby instruments, the altimeter setting matches, that's all good. Courses are in, that's 087. Yes, indeed. So, run the approach checklist now, I suppose. Altimeters and instruments, set and cross-checked. Approach aids, checked and set. Approach checklist complete. And we can pop the VSD onto the FO side for a little bit of reference and bump the range out to make it, you know, actually useful. I don't feel much need to put the terrain display on his side because this whole area is flat as a pancake. Anyway, our general benchmarks for speed, gear, and flap extension are going to be at the 10-mile range ring. We want to be at flaps 5. At the 5 DME range ring, we'll set flaps 15, put the gear down, and start decelerating towards VRF. And once again, I find myself without too much to add. We can probably arm approach relatively soon. Maybe once we get towards, technically the lowest. Yeah, it's not entirely clear to me when the precisely best time to do that is on here. I'll sync the heading bug for now, since that's always a useful idle fidget activity. Localizer and glide slope, we've got those. Yeah, let's just do the thing. Localizer and glide slope captured pretty much immediately upon doing that. Slightly above glide slope, so the aircraft's picking up a bit of speed. I'll extend the speed brake just to stay on top of that. And once that's set, might as well put in our go-around altitude, so that's going to be 3,000. So go-around altitude 3,000 set. The aircraft is picking up speed a bit abruptly, even with the speed brake out at flight to 10th there. Well, hopefully we can get rid of that. Tell you what I can do right now is brief the taxi in. So, we'll be vacating right from runway 08 right. Our designated gate is Delta 15, but with the static aircraft I have being injected into the sim, we might just have to kind of take whatever's available over there. But in principle it's about here. It should be a pretty short taxi in then, especially if we vacate more or less where we intended to. Still a little fast. Let's start with some bridge, and if we get really desperate we can even put the gear down. Speed's coming back slowly. We'll do flat 2 for now, and yeah, it's coming back towards what it probably ought to be, although we're back to manual speed here. Tell you what, let's do flat 2 maneuvering speed. Soon to be flaps 5. Yeah, let's do flaps 5 early if we still have some speed to get rid of. So, back to flaps 5 maneuvering speed, 165 knots. And if that speed doesn't come off quickly enough, I'll put the gear down a little bit early. So once again, approach speed is going to be 147 with a VREF of 142. Okay, now that speed's coming back, we're probably going to hit our benchmark decently enough. I'll hold the gear for now. Although that is still with the speed brake extended, let's put that in and see what happens. I'll leave it in the armed position since we're going to need it to be there shortly. Yeah, we'll just leave that be for a bit here. Let's see, go around altitude set. I'll do my before landing flows relatively shortly. Let's put the retractable landing lights on. That'll actually add a small amount of drag, I think. That's 2,500 checked. Now, the last time I flew the 737 on the channel, I forgot to do the landing checklist. We won't be forgetting that this time because it's bouncing around in my head, he says. At our flaps 5 maneuvering speed, still holding the gear for a little bit. It's 6.0 DME. Verify the seatbelt sign is on as a bit of a sanity check. The lights are more or less as they should be. Alright, coming up on 5 DME, gear down, flaps 15, and set flaps 15 maneuvering speed for now. And we'll do our pre-landing flows. So, continuous, speed brakes armed, gear down, 3 greens, auto brake is set, landing lights, oops, all on, we already did that. And landing checklist, well, let's do flaps 30 first. Flaps 30, 147, landing checklist. Start switch is continuous, recall check, speed brake, armed green light, gear down 3 greens, auto brake 3 set, flaps 30 green light, landing lights on. Landing checklist complete. I'll disconnect the autopilot pretty soon as well.
1,000.
Slightly fast. I'll let the auto throttle correct on to speed, and then I will take over. Alright, that's good enough. My aircraft. Auto throttle is coming off as well. Get your nose up, a little bit of power in. Oh, power. And 147, power back a bit. Just a little bit bumpy on the way in here. Nothing too bad though. A slight crosswind, a little bit more than the weather I read before would have suggested. Maybe that'll calm off right as we come down to the surface. That is a relatively common occurrence. This minimum's checked, we'll continue.
100. 50. 30. 20. 10.
Ooh, this might be a bit stiff. Right on the markers though. Reverse. $60 knots, cancel reverse, manual brakes. And we'll vacate on the next taxiway. Okay, I'll start cleaning up the airplane. Speed brakes can come in. Everything else I'll wait till we're vacated to worry about. And this is a high speed, so we can keep a little bit of speed on. And our gate is basically right there, so that'll be nice and quick. And I will actually stop the airplane once we're over the line to do all my after landing items, because I don't have a first officer to do them for me, or to have one person taxi and one person actually see to it. Just, tail should be over the line there, yeah. Okay. Right, after landing items. Speed brake is down. Lights, we'll put landing lights off. Set off. Taxi light on. Turn off lights can stay on because it's kind of dark out there. Position lights to steady. And transponder will go to alt off. Flaps can come up. Trim will set 4 units. Auto brake is already off. MFD will bring up the engine page. Flight directors can come off. The MCP speed, we'll wind that back to 100 and 3,100 on the altitude. Start switches can come off. Probe heaters come off. And because we are so close to the gate, I'll start the APU right now as well. And just pull up the port chart here. And yeah, 15 is right here. So we'll just take that on in. We've got master caution, that's just from the APU starting up. You know, I'm not sure that taxiway actually exists in this version of the scenery. Yeah, I don't think it does. We'll go the other way then. There has been some recent construction at this airport, so that's probably why it doesn't match the chart perfectly. A lot of thuds going on, I'm not really sure what that's about. Whatever. We can shut that PSD off, as well as the weather display. What's prompting that? I think it's just the APU thing. Okay. Keep the speed to 10 knots because we'll be turning soon. At least let it come back. And really not much else to do on the taxi in. You know, our gate might even be available. See? Go to November Kilo and then wind around this way. Might have been easier to go the other way, hard to say. Yeah, I've already got enough speed, don't need any more power. I'm a little bit parched, but I don't have any water on hand. Oh well, we'll be at the gate soon enough. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Houston. The local time is... what is it anyway? I don't know. Well, never mind that then. Okay, over to my parking gates ramp. Is there actually a taxi line that runs down there? Yes. We'll just go to any one of the ones on this big flap-sided part of the building here. We'll ignore the FedEx aircraft parked at the passenger terminal, I suppose. And I bet that 747's a... Actually, no, that's probably a Lufthansa one. Right. Back to 10 knots. Hang left. Okay, we'll just go to this one over here. How about? And as we come into the apron, I'll maybe shut the turn-off lights off. APU is running and available. It would be good to shut down right away there. Is that an Air Canada 737 MAX? Yes, it is. Just park up right beside the competition there. I think it's one more taxi line after this one, yeah? Yeah. No fancy scenery for this place, it's just the stock stuff, but I think in general that looks good enough. Now normally I would turn the taxi light off as I pull in to the parking position here, but it doesn't seem to be illuminated by anything, so I might actually need that taxi light. And in the absence of any kind of marshaller, I will use the external view to cheat a bit. Well, how well lit is that? Not very. Okay, yeah, taxi light is just gonna have to stay on. We'll come back to about 5 knots, and oh, look at that nose wheel. Slightly off. Close enough. Okay, parking brake set. Now the taxi light can come off. That's not the taxi light, that's one of the turn-off lights. Alright, APU can go onto the buses. 2 blues, 1 red. Engine's dead, as it were. So start levers cut off. And you guys in the back can get up and scramble for the door that isn't open yet. And we'll just wait for 20% N2 to shut the anti-collision light off. While we're waiting for that, we can start getting our ground operations going. So set the chocks. Once those are set, the parking brake can be released. Call for the jetway. There it goes. And I think that'll open the door automatically. Flight attendants, disarm doors, and all that good stuff. Open up the cargo doors. Get the baggage vehicles going. And did that door open when the jetway connected? No. So we'll open it ourselves. And now that's open. Alright, N2 is below 20%. Anti-collision light can come off. And tell you what, I'm going to put the dome light on so I can actually see everything as we go to shut down here. Alright, so shut down. Fuel pumps. Off with the exception of the one supplying the APU there. The electrical system. APU is on the buses. We'll put the APU bleed on so that we're getting air conditioning. Fast seatbelt sign is off. Window heat can come off. Probe heat's already off. Anti-ice is off. Electric hydraulic pumps off. Voice recorder auto. Air conditioning packs auto. Engine bleeds on. APU bleed. Actually, that is going to be on. Exterior lights. We'll leave the logo light on to represent the brand and all that. Start switches off. Auto brakes off. Speed brake is in the down detent. Flaps are up with no lights. Parking brake is released, but that's because the chocks are in. Start levers are cut off. Weather radar is off. Transponder 2000. Standby. I'll tell you what, the manual controls for weather radar are down here as well. I think we actually need to touch that though. Right. And after that, the final item is cockpit door unlocked, at which point we can go and say goodbye to our passengers. And they've all buggered off already, so on that terrible disappointment, I think it's time to bring an end to this little trip of ours. I hope it's been reasonably enjoyable to watch. I definitely do like doing civil aviation-y things in Microsoft Flight Sim, at least occasionally. It's a nice change of pace and decently good fun, so hope it's been equally enjoyable to watch. And I think that's going to be it for now. Toodles.